There's a thing out there.
Why is any object we don't understand always called a thing?
Headed this way. I need you. Damn it, Bones. I need you. Badly.
Captain Kirk reunites the crew of the Starship Enterprise as an alien threat speeds toward Earth in the new movie version of Star Trek, one of 5 new movies we'll be reviewing this time on Sneak Previews. Across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And this is Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. Now, in addition to Star Trek, on which we really disagree, guess who likes it? We'll be reviewing Alien, the outer space horror film that is setting box office records all across the United States.
Battlestar Galactica, bringing interstellar warfare, but not very much else, from the TV series to the movie screen.
Also, the adventure and comedy of Buck Rogers in the 25th century.
And now Gene starts with The Black Hole.
My first film is one of the most eagerly awaited movies of the holiday season. Walt Disney Productions' The Black Hole, a $20 million space adventure that's being billed, I think, as Disney's answer to Star Wars. Sad to say, though, it's not much of an answer. The story is about an American space exploration team that stumbles upon 2 strange objects in deep space, a gigantic spaceship that's been missing for 20 years, and a strange funnel-like formation called a black hole. The crew includes Ernest Borgnine, Anthony Perkins, Yvette Mimieux, and a tin-can version of the little robot from Star Wars.
My God! Right out of Dante's Inferno. Yes. The most destructive force in the universe, Harry. Nothing can escape it, not even light.
I had a professor who predicted that eventually black holes would devour the entire universe.
Why not? When you can see giant suns sucked in and disappear without a trace. Give us some magnification, Vincent.
Every time I see one of those things, I expect to spot some guy in red with horns and a pitchfork.
It's a monster, all right.
A rip in the very fabric of space and time. But I picked up something else of interest.
Let's see it.
It hasn't moved since I first picked it up. It seems to be some kind of ship.
USS Cygnus. Its mission to discover habitable life in outer space. Same as ours.
Now that was thoroughly dull, at least I think so. The crew is a bunch of mopes. The interior of that spacecraft was so dark and dreary. As for the image of the black hole there, it looked like maybe a gown that I think that the Blue Fairy wore in Pinocchio. In reality, black holes are presumed to be something like collapsed stars, very dense with a tremendous gravitational pull, so strong scientists theorize that not even light can escape them, so you can't really see a black hole. But the film, I guess it has to give us something to look at, and this is the only time now that the black hole is even remotely exciting, when the crew gets close for a visit. Too close.
Air brake amidship. Losing oxygen.
Charlie, give me a full burst at 180 degrees, main thrusters.
We've got a break here, too. Emergency readout shows the primary and secondary airlines ruptured.
Never rains. Full pitch attitude thrusters, A and B rings. The black hole is pulling us in. Going to manual.
Cross between a bathtub drain and a blue donut. That sort of thing is the kind of thing we expected to see all throughout the black hole. No such luck. Most of the film is about the crew investigating that other big missing spaceship and a villain they find on it. Only in the last few minutes do we actually get into the black hole. Then it's exciting, but Wow, it's a long, long wait.
I've got to agree with you on this one, Gene. It is a long wait, and it's been a long wait for this movie, too. Disney's been talking about it for 2 and 3 years. Their big $20 million science fiction extravaganza, and the last thing we expected, I think, from Disney, which has been so innovative over the years. I mean, they gave us the full-length animated feature. They gave us a lot of great science fiction pictures earlier, like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. What do we see here but a little robot, looks like a salt shaker, ripped off from Star Wars, but his eyes are painted on. He just turns his head. It's not even great animation. And another robot in this picture that looks like Darth Vader from Star Wars. This is not an original picture. I think at Christmas time, when we go to a new Disney science fiction movie, we want to see something we haven't seen before. And this is crummy as far as new science fiction is concerned.
Absolutely. In fact, when we get in the black hole, it's frankly a lot like 2001. You know, I got to ask the question, at least raise it. Can Disney make a good film anymore? It's been a long, long time since we've seen them. Both you and I love their early work. I wonder what's going on. Are they afraid of Walt Disney's memory or something? Why isn't this picture better? It's very disappointing. Little kids may like the last few minutes. I don't think an adult will at all.
You know, you are right that there isn't a lot of, they didn't take many chances here. The cast, for example, is a bunch of stars that maybe were supposed to go see Ernest Borgnine or something. Star Wars had people we hadn't seen before, doing things we hadn't seen before. In this movie, it's a brand new movie that seems very familiar. And now you mentioned spaceships. We're back to spaceships again. I'm sorry, Gene, but it's the way it goes. Two of the most successful genres of the last 5 years have been science fiction and horror films, and Alien is both. It's a combination of some of the best space hardware since Star Wars and the most gruesome bug-eyed monster since the creature from the Black Lagoon. The movie begins aboard a gigantic intergalactic freighter where the crew is in suspended animation until the onboard computer awakens them for an emergency. The captain explains why their mission has been changed.
Well, some of you may have figured out we're not home yet. We're only halfway there.
What?
Mother's interrupted the course of our journey.
Why?
Yeah. She's programmed to do that should certain conditions arise. They have.
Like what?
Seems she has intercepted a transmission of unknown origin. She got us up to check it out.
A transmission? Out here?
Yeah.
What kind of a transmission?
Acoustical beacon that repeats at intervals of 12 seconds.
SOS?
I don't know.
Human?
Unknown.
So what? We are obligated under section.
I hate to bring this up, but this is a commercial ship, not a rescue ship.
Right.
And it's not my contract to do this kind of duty. And what about the money? If you want to give me some money to do, I'd be happy to, you know, oblige.
That's right.
Let's go with the bonus situation. We never
Can we
let's talk about the bonus situation.
Sorry, can I say something?
Let's talk about the bonus situation.
There is a clause in the contract which specifically states any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated.
I don't want to hear it.
We don't know that's intelligent.
I want to go home and party.
Parker, will you just listen to the man?
On penalty of total forfeiture of shares. Money.
You got that?
Yeah.
All right, we're going in.
Yeah.
I think Star Wars kind of pioneered that idea that a spaceship, instead of being all kind of perfect and sterile like the one in 2001, would look more like a gut bucket, like that kind of a tramp freighter, and there's the crew on board. The beacon signal comes from a nearby unexplored planet anyway, and so space regulations require them to land, and they do in one of the movie's really most inspired scenes. They explore a terrifying planetary landscape, they discover an ancient alien spaceship, and they work themselves into a very tight spot while their discoveries are monitored by television back on board.
Ash, can you see this?
Yes, I can. I've never seen anything like it.
You get a wonderful sense there of something that might have been waiting there a long time for somebody to find it. Anyway, they go on board that mysterious ship, and they wind up bringing back an extremely unwelcome guest on board their own ship, an alien creature that's the movie's most original invention. Now, I don't want to give away too much. I'm not giving away too much when I say it's kind of a cross between a squid and a spider and the Thing, and it's not real great to look at because its body is covered with extraterrestrial intestines, and the humans battle for survival. The alien oozes around the ship like a mucous membrane from outer space, and the movie is one of the scariest old-fashioned space operas I can remember.
Well, it did scare me, too. I looked away, and I was yelling with, like, a few other people, it's going to hit them on the floor, it's going to come from the ceiling.
It's in the next row, it's behind me in the theater. Right.
But I want to say that, you know, strip away all the beautiful scenery and the evocative weirdness of the picture. What we really have here is basically the haunted house film, only instead of a wild creature running around in a haunted house, we got a wild creature running around in a spaceship. And so this is not the greatest science fiction film ever made, even though it seems to be doing very well across the country.
Well, I think the combination of horror and science fiction is a very appealing one right now, very commercial. There is one moment, though, when the film does transcend just that horror, haunted spaceship sort of thing, and that's in this scene we just saw. As it goes on a little bit further, they enter that spaceship, they go inside, they find the alien pilot all desiccated from his voyage that might have taken place millions of years ago, and then they go into that big enormous cavern down below and what they find there and so forth. Gives you a real sense, I mean, from the point of view of art direction and everything else, that this could have been an alien ship. It's not just another TV or movie creation.
Yeah, one consumer point. A lot of young people are probably going to want to see this picture. They love horror films. This one's pretty bloody. It is pretty violent, and I think a lot of people, adults and kids, are going to be turned off and maybe frightened too much by it. So for young kids, certainly, this is not a picture to go see.
It's R-rated.
Yeah, for a reason.
Yeah, there's a reason for it.
Okay. The craze now for outer space adventure films is so strong, and it's going to get stronger because of Alien, that films originally made for TV that have something to do with space are now being released in movie theaters, all in an effort to satisfy the enormous hunger in kids for another Star Wars-type adventure. Recently, we reviewed Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, which was originally made for TV. Now comes Battlestar Galactica, which, and this is even more outrageous, it already has been on TV in a slightly altered form. The movie version has a souped-up soundtrack, but it's virtually identical to the 3-hour TV pilot for the recently canceled series Battlestar Galactica. Lauren Green and a bunch of leaders of Earthling types from outer space, they debate on whether they should make friends in peace with some of their old adversaries, the evil Cylons.
Mr. President, a wall of unidentified craft is closing in on the fleet. Possibly a Cylon welcoming committee. Sir, may I suggest we launch a welcoming committee of our own?
My friend, we are on a peace mission. The first peace man has known in 1,000 years.
Well, it wouldn't be much of a show if peace were maintained, would it? The Cylons launch a surprise attack, and Lauren Green and company strike back.
Fighters. All batteries commence fire.
All fire control stations manned and operational.
That's really dead. You know, all the explosions look a lot alike there. Originally made for TV, Battlestar Galactica really looks cheap when it's blown up 50 or 100 times its original TV screen size. The same thing applies here as with The Promise. Why pay money for what you have already seen for free on TV? I don't get it.
The ads have a really strange phrase. They call it the original theatrical version of the television film.
They're just assembling there, and they're trying to fool kids, I think.
I think so. And also, of course, all the ads emphasize it's in sense-around. And is it ever in sense-around? The dialogue is so dumb that at every possible moment they go to this enormous roaring, trembling vibration throughout the theater. I walked into the theater, the jujubes and the candy counter were dancing around. I mean, everything is vibrating. Don't go with a headache or an upset stomach.
Go to watch the dancing jujubes. It's more exciting. Also, these a bunch of old men who just talk in these biblical phrases. This is a pretty worthless film.
I'm going to send my firstborn son out to battle and so forth and so on, and then they're driving around on these little toys on strings and so forth. It's a total, complete ripoff. But speaking of spaceships, for our next movie, Star Trek, there are, I think, 2 questions that have to be answered. Everybody wants the answers to these. First, does Star Trek do justice to the popular television series? And second, are the special effects any good? Well, I think the answer to both questions is yes. the television series made a successful formula out of combining adventures in outer space with basic questions about human nature, and so does the movie, which opens as a vast alien presence, sort of a star cloud, is discovered heading straight toward planet Earth. And the Starship Enterprise, which has just completed a massive overhaul, is assigned to go out and meet the invader, and Captain Kirk, who has now been promoted to Admiral Kirk, tries to reassemble his old crew. Everyone's on board except Mr. Spock, the half-human, half-Vulcan, totally logical science officer, who in this scene surprises the crew by turning up late.
Permission to come aboard, sir.
Granted, sir, granted.
Spock. Spock.
I've been monitoring your communications with Starfleet Command, Captain. I'm aware of your engine design difficulties. I offer my services as science officer. With all due respect, Commander.
Mr. Spock. Well, so help me, I'm actually pleased to see you.
We all feel, Mr. Spock.
Captain, with your permission, I will now discuss these fuel equations with the engineer.
Mr. Spock, welcome aboard.
And so the old crew's back together again, plus a last-minute replacement named Ilea, an alien who joins the crew and then is cloned by the invading space cloud. In this scene, the invaders use Ilea as a way of making contact with Kirk and his crew.
I've been programmed by V'ger to observe and record normal functions of the carbon-based units infesting USS Enterprise.
Jim, tricorder. Who is V'ger?
V'ger is that which programmed me.
Where is Lieutenant Ilea?
That unit no longer functions. I've been given its form to more readily communicate with the carbon-based units infesting Enterprise.
Carbon-based units? Humans, Ensign Perez. Us.
Guess I never really thought about myself as a carbon-based unit before. The story of the Star Trek movie revolves around favorite themes of the TV series, which are: what is intelligence, what is life, and in which ways are humans, and Vulcans too for that matter, different from the other beings in the universe? The crew of the Enterprise confronts these questions after they meet the invading alien force, and that leads to all sorts of opportunities for the movie to exploit what we're really looking forward to, which is the special effects. And so, how good are the special effects? I thought they were pretty good. The scenes in the futuristic spaceport at the beginning of the movie are obviously phony, but the stuff in outer space ranges from the adequate to, on a few occasions, the mind-boggling. Star Trek is not as visionary as 2001, it's not as scary as Alien, it's not as exuberant as Star Wars, but it is fun at the movies, and I had a good time.
And my mind wasn't boggled once by any of the special effects. I'm sorry, we saw the same effects, but we had wildly different reactions, although, to be fair, you did say at the beginning they weren't so hot. They had a lot of trouble getting the special effects, I think you know this, and they had to change special effects teams, and frankly, all that they got, I think, are just small duplications of some of the stuff in Star Wars, which we've seen so often that we're really, I think, looking for an advance from that now, and so I wasn't really dazzled at all.
Do you think, Gino, that we get too hung up on the technology in these science fiction movies, that after 2001, after Alien, after Star Wars, the critics in particular are looking at the special effects as kind of a sweepstakes, whereas the audience is really more interested in the movie as an entertainment or as an experience than...
You said it right when you were talking. You said the two things we want to know. Is it as good as the TV show, and are the special effects any good? I think
they are fairly good. They're not, you're right, they're not as great as 2001.
So that's a letdown. Of course you want to see something better that you haven't been seen before. That's the whole basis of movies, dazzle us, especially when they go out to outer space. But on the question of the story, I think that there's a big flaw here. Maybe you agree. There's this black cloud invading. We're set up. That's the major confrontation. So naturally, we wait for 2 hours to find out what's in the cloud and what's going to happen. Who's going to get hit? Who's going to hit whom? Well, it never happens. We get a real letdown here, and we get some of that phony moralizing from the TV show. Guys in spaceships telling us we're human because we love each other or something.
Well, I don't think it's phony moralizing. I think that's one of the endearing things about the TV show and about the movie is the way that it kind of looks at human nature in a fairly optimistic way. But I agree with you, they missed the boat by not having a great villain. The greatest thing about Star Wars was Darth Vader. Darth Vader was the most popular character in the movie, and I think here they missed the boat by not having a villain equally as bizarre, as outrageous, or as individual.
I don't know. What I'm saying, I guess, is maybe little kids will like it, but I think that even they will be bored because the film just runs on.
Okay, well then here we do have a major difference in opinion. You're saying little kids will like it. I'm saying a lot of other people will like it too. I enjoyed it. I think as a movie named Star Trek, the sort of thing we're anticipating, I think this is a pretty good experience.
And I was let down. Okay.
Our next movie, talking about movies that are remakes, even worse, is a ripoff. I wasn't surprised to see Buck Rogers come along for that reason, especially not after Star Wars broke every box office record in sight. Because one thing's inevitable about an enormous hit movie like Star Wars, and that is we know it's going to inspire countless imitations and satires and rip-offs, and I guess you could say there's a little bit of all of those things in this new movie called Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. It's based on the old comic strip about an astronaut who's catapulted into the future through our old friend the Time Warp. Those are always dependable, you know. And the future, for some reason, looks a lot like the past, with beautiful damsels in distress, sinister villains, cliff-hanging adventures. Here's one of the movie's dogfights in space. It's a direct rip-off of Star Wars.
Watch out, Major, on your tail. Roll over, I'll get him. Pull up, I can cut him off. Not that way, you're rolling right into his power.
Captain Rogers, I ordered you to stay out of this.
Colonel, you need all the help you can get. Look out, Baker, he's onto you. Colonel, take it down, straight down, then put on your retros. Pull up, I'll get him.
Not exactly the greatest special effects in the world. Have you sort of noticed that the spaceships or the people in them never move? Anyway, Buck Rogers single-handedly wins this battle and then pays a visit to the enemy's starship.
Welcome aboard the flagship Draconia.
Delighted. This is an unexpected pleasure.
I'm Colonel Deering, commander of the 3rd Force of the Earth Directorate, and I believe you already know Captain Rogers.
I don't believe we've had the pleasure.
I think you're mistaken, Princess. I never forget a knuckle.
This movie started out as a made-for-TV film, and it really doesn't hold up on the big screen. The movie tries to get away with its cheap production by throwing in a lot of camp humor, but the jokes wear pretty thin after the first, say about 5 minutes, and the special effects wear so thin you can almost see through them at times.
Yeah, I didn't like it either, but my biggest objection is this film is a real manipulation here. This is obvious. The picture doesn't end in the way we expected. The villains aren't vanquished, and the only reason they did that, they wanted to leave it room for a sequel. So this is the problem. They're trying to make another film, not the one at hand, and the audience really gets shafted in this picture.
Hold on a minute, Gene. I think we have a guest in the balcony, and I think it might be Spot the Wonder Dog. Hello, Spot. Here to introduce the dogs of the week. That's as if Buck Rogers wasn't enough of a dog for this week. Well, my dog this week is in the spirit of the season. I'm going to have the turkey of the week, and its name is Message from Space, an imported Japanese space opera inspired by Star Wars. Now, it's all about how people from another planet threaten to take over the universe and how the good guys fight back in spaceships after being summoned to battle by, now you got to get this, radioactive nuggets that glow in the dark. Now, look at these trashy special effects. Model airplanes heading for a poached egg. But then, what do you expect from a movie where the characters jump out of the way just before a nuclear bomb hits, then they pull out their swords for a real fight? This movie is a message from space, all right, and the message is send this movie to Mars.
Well, what have you got against the Martians, you know? My dog this week is a hound from summer that refused to stop barking. It's Battle Beyond the Stars, a science fiction film that is mostly a Star Wars ripoff and partly an imitation of the Magnificent Seven, with Richard Thomas as a space adventurer who tries to save the universe from being overrun by a madman, of course. Thomas recruits the help of weirdos from all over the universe, including a cowboy played by George Peppard. Beyond the Battle of the Stars is really not original, not entertaining. It's just another watered-down version of Star Wars, ripping off kids who hunger for more of the real thing.
Well, so much for the dogs. Now let's take one more look at the major movies on this program. The Black Hole is the new science fiction space opera from Walt Disney. Has some dazzling special effects at the end, but the story just didn't thrill us, so it gets 2 no votes. Neither Gene or I can recommend you see The Black Hole, rated PG. Alien, the R-rated science fiction thriller with the creepiest monster in years, also got 2 yes votes, but Battlestar Galactica, a feature based on last season's big-budget TV series, was lost in space as far as we were concerned.
Roger and I split on Star Trek. Roger found it fanciful and fun. I found it a bloated, totally unamazing, stretched version of the TV show. Roger says yes, he recommends you see Star Trek. I say no. And finally, we both agree that Buck Rogers in the 25th century is a poor imitation of Star Wars. 2 loud no's for that. Well, that's it for this week. Next time on Sneak Previews, we're going to review 5 more new films, including Moonraker, James Bond's big new adventure, Outland, starring Sean Connery as a sheriff in outer space, and Saturn III, the science fiction adventure starring Kirk Douglas and Farrah Fawcett. Until then, see you at the movies.
Funding for Sneak Previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.